In this video, we're going to look at the basics of how to set up a Blackboard Grade Center so that students can see their grades and a final grade will be calculated. So starting in whatever course that you want to set up your grade center in, you're going to come over here to the panel on the left-hand side and look for the Grade Center option. If you click on that, it will open up some extra options. And in this case, we're going to go to the full Grade Center, which is going to show us everything that exists in our Grade Center. Now, when you first log into your Blackboard, you should see a couple of things. You should see your students' last names and their first names already there, and there should already be a weighted total column sitting in your Blackboard. That gets automatically generated every time a course is set up, and this is the column that's used to calculate the student's final grade. Beyond that, there usually won't be any columns in your Blackboard, but those are easy enough to set up. There are two ways that you can get those columns set up. The first is, if you are doing anything in Blackboard that's a graded assignment, Blackboard will generate those columns for you. So that applies to assignments and tests, which have marks associated with them, but it also applies to things like graded discussions, wikis, blogs, and journals. So anything that has a mark attached to it, Blackboard will create the column for you. So we can see in my Grade Center that I already have a column for Test 1 and a column for Assignment 1 as well. Now, there may be things in your course that are not submitted through the system or done like a test or an assignment that still have to be graded. So in those cases, you can go into your Grade Center and you can manually create a column for pretty much anything you want that's graded. To manually set up a column, you're going to come up to the top left of your Grade Center page and click on the Create Column button. And that's going to open a screen that will need a bit of information from you. The first thing it will need is a column name. In this case, let's call this Presentation. Something that's fairly straightforward and going to make sense for students is usually a really good idea here. You can put in a description if you want, but as long as the column name is relatively self-explanatory, you're also probably fine not to, so this is mostly personal preference. The important piece down here has to do with the display and the points associated with that column. So the primary display is how students will see their grades. And we have a few different options here, but some of them we don't typically use at the college. So score is quite common and does work very well if you're grading out of something that's less than 100. So if you have an assignment that's out of 25 or 37 or 10, score is a great way to do that. You can also do percentage if that makes more sense for your grading. If you're grading some larger assignments, or if you do tend to grade everything out of 100, you can certainly make that choice. And we do also have a complete or incomplete option here, which is used in some programs. So these are all options that are available to you. You can choose whichever one makes the most sense for you. I'm going to go with score in this case. You also have the option to choose a secondary display, which is shown in the Grade Center only, but if you did want to see the percentages, you could certainly choose that, and then you would have a sense of what those scores actually looked like in terms of percentage. So maybe I will do that here. You have the option to choose a category. If you are grading things as a group or as a category, this is an important option. If you're not, though, you don't usually have to worry about it, so you can generally leave that alone. And then for points possible, you're just going to put in however many points the assignment is out of. So one of the nice things about Blackboard is that Blackboard does grading in a two-step process. There's the creating of the columns and the giving of the grades so that students will have that information. But then those columns are individually taken, added into a weighted total column where you can set however much they're worth towards the final grade. So when we're at a stage like this, setting up these columns, getting everything ready to go, the easiest thing to do is to just grade the assignment out of whatever makes the most sense for that particular assignment, and it will get weighted towards the final grade later on. So if it makes sense for you to grade an assignment out of 17, even if that assignment is worth 10% of the course grade, that's totally fine. You could grade an assignment out of 957 points and make it worth 15% of the course grade. So you don't really have to do all of that mental math at this point. You can just put in however many points make sense for that assignment. So in this case, I'm going to say that I'm going to grade this assignment out of 47 points for whatever reason. If I did have my primary display set as percentage, this would have to be out of 100 because that's what percentages are out of. But in this case, I can put however many points I'm going to grade out of. If I do have a rubric ready to go in the system, I can choose one and attach it here. I have the option to select or create a new one, and that can be attached to the Grade Center column. You can also attach a due date if you want. In most cases, there probably is a due date already attached to the assignment, so it's not absolutely necessary to put it in here, but it is a nice option to know about. And then we have a few options down here that you can choose. So the first is to include this column in Grade Center calculations. If you are intending to use whatever is in this column for grading purposes, you just want to leave that on and the default is fine. You can choose to show the column to students or not. We do always recommend making the column available to students at some point in the semester because it is very important for them to see their grades. But if you did want to have this column not visible for, say, a week while you completed the grading so that some students weren't getting their grades ahead of other students, you can hide that column if you feel so inclined and then make it available later. And then it's up to you whether you show statistics to students or not. Sometimes that can be motivating, but often it does tend to result in additional questions about why students are lower than the class average. So if you are interested in that, you can certainly turn it on. It is off by default, though. You can certainly leave it that way if that makes sense for you. Once I've got that all set up, I'm going to click on Submit. And I can see that I've got my presentation column available to me here now. And if I were grading students, I can just click in that box and I can type in whatever their grade is. Now we'll save, and we can see that I've got my percentage here. Blackboard percentages do default to 5 points past the decimal, so that is a little bit longer than you might typically expect, but there it is. And just so that you know, if you want to, first of all, make any changes to that column, if you click on the drop down next to the column, you can always come back to Edit Column Information. And you can make any changes that you need to here. You can also, from this panel, choose to hide and show that column to students if you feel so inclined. So if you are doing that for grading purposes, I can come here and I can hide that column. We can see here that I've got this icon, the circle with the line through it. That means it's not currently visible to students. And then if I come back to that panel again, I can turn that off really easily. So there, I've got my column ready to go. I can build as many columns like this as I need. Anything that isn't automatically generated by the system, I can come in here and very easily put in for myself.